All right, in 5 minutes, I'll teach you how to be much more creative with your concept art. What we're going to do is we're going to look at how you can apply studies and turn that into design. And this is something you should actually do more often, but you should do it with the right intention. First topic is that what you actually want to do is you want to do the fill principle. I've talked about this before. It's one of our mantras at Artwod. It's called the fill principle. What does it mean? It's focus, intention, and limitation. So what does that mean for this particular study and design that I'm going to do is my focus was on I want to better understand texture. And the intention is to better understand it through color. So the focus is texture. The intention is to better understand it through color. That's why we're doing these tree bark studies. And then the limitation in this case was time. So this is for one of our Artwod workouts. So I basically did this as a demo for the students, and there was obviously a time limit. So this is a principle that I would very much advocate a lot of you try and do, because it will help you create literally more focus in your studies. And by limiting yourself, again, you become more creative, because that's the premise of this entire video, is that we're going to focus on limitation, because limitation drives creativity. That's it. It's that easy. As you can see, what I'm doing here is I'm doing a particular study within a time limit of these tree barks, and I'm focusing on the color and how I can get that particular feeling of texture through the color. So I'm not trying to hyper focus on getting every value variation and every brushstroke in there to mimic that texture. I don't want to get it as detailed. I'm getting fairly close, but I'm doing it through the colors that I can see and use in the photo, right? Same for the other one. Again, exact same principle. I'm trying to focus on color, shadow, and light, and trying to focus on how I can get as close as possible to this very interesting texture that we have going on in the tree bark. Once I've done that, I'm done. The studies are done. Now it's time to create something innovative, something that you've never seen before, basically creating concept art. Right? So how do I go about it? Well, in this case, I started immediately with a mannequin. However, I want to frame this a little bit, because what you see me do here might look like scribbling, but again, I can do this because I understand form extremely well. If you don't understand it that well, I would highly recommend, if you want to do, in this case, a humanized design based on a study, that you start with a very clear mannequinized version of that design. The reason I say this is because you don't always want to do this. Often you want to start with a very graphic design and then reverse engineer the mannequin into it. However, in this case, because you've done studies, you can now, based on those studies, and this is actually what I was thinking, based on those studies, start creating forms that closely relate to the subject matter you were drawing. So in this case, for me, that would be tree bark. And I can use my knowledge of the mannequin to come up with a design that I can be creative with. So what does that mean? What did that mean for this? In this case, I was starting with a head that was a little bit more cylindrical, and the body sort of stayed the same. It was this mannequinized body. So I'm going to draw the mannequin in this case, right? That was leaning forward. It's a pose that I have drawn a million times at this point, right? So I'm just thinking about the mannequin, the cylinder, how that fits together. If you don't have a particular mannequin for yourself yet, I would highly recommend you build one for yourself. And the only way you can build one for yourself is by studying it a lot, is by studying simple form a lot, looking and observing real life a lot, and then making your own observations, making your own puzzle pieces. This is literally what we do and have you practice in our beginner roads, is make your own puzzle pieces, because your own puzzle pieces will make you much more efficient than trying to force yourself into other people's solutions of things. So again, the arm as well is just a cylinder, in this case going out, and then I attached a really sort of big lower arm next to it, with then the hands going out like this, right? So this is essentially the simple form that I'm thinking about. So you can see that although this looks very graphical, I'm thinking about form, as always, right? I'm the form guy. That's what I think about. And it really helps me be more creative. Because once I have that form, right, I can start adding detail based on the things I just studied. So the things I just studied in the tree bark, I can again use that. I can use sort of those shapes, and I can use them very loosely because I've basically gotten some visual cues on how to add these textures. I have some cool shapes that I can use just graphically. So I'm starting to add that to the design. And then that's all I do. It's not that I refine this line art very well because, again, remember, the focus was on color, adding texture through color. So that's what I also want to now do in the design. So the intent and the focus of my study goes into the design. That should be your focus. You're limiting yourself both in time as well as in study. And then you're using that exact intention of the study in the design. So you're not now going to suddenly go do something completely different and do a very detailed line art because that wasn't your study, right? And this is what I mean with making you more creative. It's about having intention in what you do and then using that intention when you create your design. So then I just go and I literally just use everything from the colors and the implied texture that I had from those studies, and I put that in this creature. And that's it. That's essentially how I end up with this, right? Because here's the thing, like a lot of people, when they see me post something or when they see other artists post something, you're seeing the end of the magic trick. And a lot of the times you think this is what that artist was meant to do from the beginning. Not at all true. You saw me start with those studies, and that's exactly what I did. When I started doing this for our Artwod students, I had no idea that I was going to end up with this creature design. I just knew we're going to do studies with a particular focus and intent, and we're going to limit ourselves in a certain way. And because of my experience as a professional artist and as a teacher, I know that I will end up with something because I'm limiting myself and I can be creative within that limitation. So if you want to be more creative, use our fill principle. Try this exact study if you want to, or try this exact workout. It's still up on Artwod as well. And limit yourself and then start creating something simple or as complex as your skill level allows, and then use that focus study that you did to make something creative. All right? I've definitely gone overboard, so definitely no plug this time. But again, you learned something, so enjoy, guys.